Hi, this is Natalie from Namaste Farms, and today I'm going to talk about beginning spinning. The first thing I want to point out is that rules are there just so that we have a baseline, and then you really need to branch out from that. I'm not a huge rule follower, and I think if you've watched any of my other videos, you probably have noticed that. My favorite example of a no rules type person is actually Eddie Van Halen. And he is known, obviously, for his guitar playing, and people think he's a genius. He doesn't read music and he's never had a lesson, but yet he's considered one of the best guitarists in the industry. So when I start feeling guilty that I won't, maybe I don't know all the rules or I haven't taken classes, etc., I always think of Eddie Van Halen. I sell my yarn, some of it sells for like $170 for a 3-yard skein. So just because you don't follow rules doesn't mean that you can't make amazing things, just like Eddie Van Halen. So keep that in mind. Don't get hung up on things and don't think I'm not holding it at the right angle, I'm not doing it like X person says, I'm not doing it like the book says. You have to learn the way that you can do it and then try and perfect your craft from there. And that's my best advice for you. And the other thing is everybody also knows, if you watch any of my videos, I don't like to spin from roving. So what is roving? Okay, roving is like these tubes of fiber that look like this, and they're processed and they're made, they usually come from some sort of a mill. Like I can send my fiber there and then they will wash it and they will put it into to this. And so when we're spinning this, we can end up to have perfect yarn like commercial yarn, where it's, each strand basically is a uniform size. I have a friend, her name is Stephanie Land, and she's on my Ravelry and on my Facebook, and she made this, and it's beautiful. I mean, honestly, for a hand spinner to be able to make this, and she didn't make it from roving. That's what's impressive about it. She used a fiber bat, which means that they put it in a carder, like a drum carder. They either have electric carders or carders that you can turn, and or there's like these. They look like slicker brushes for animals, and those can card. You can just use these manual carders to align all your fibers in the same direction, and then it ends up looking something like. I mean, this one looks kind of messy, but something like this. All of the fibers are aligned in one direction, and have your spinning look really good and nice, like in a uniform size. You want your fibers to be aligned. The other thing is that short fibers have to be aligned, because you just figure, you look at like the actual physics of it. If you have like a 2 or 3 inch fiber, they need to be aligned on top of each other so that they can grab hold and have enough surface area to wind tightly enough that it's not going to pull apart. I don't have that problem because I use long wool sheep, and so my mohair is always really long, so I don't have to worry about having anything carded. I have these really long fibers that actually aren't really suitable for using in a carder or using in roving because they get caught in the machines. So for me, I just do everything completely from the lot. And what that means is I'll take, sorry, excuse me just for a second, I'll take this big bunch of locks, and I spin from this. That said, because my locks are so long, I actually do sort of align them, but I align them with my hands as I'm spinning. Okay, so what I'm going to do, first of all, I guess I'll show you, actually I'll probably show you the roving. Okay, I'm going to admit that I'm not a super great roving spinner because I don't use it very often and I don't care for it. If I want perfect yarn, I've said this so many times, people are probably going, she says that one more time, I'm going to get irritated. But I just, if I want perfect yarn, I'll buy it. Or I have people like Stephanie Land, I call her Steffel. Steffel, I can get stuff from her, and she's an artist, and I prefer to get my perfect yarn from someone that enjoys spinning it, a hand spinner, or I can just buy some of the commercial yarns. Okay, so having your tension right is really important. Okay, and I've always said this, this is my quality control hand, my left hand's my quality control, my right hand does my drafting. So my right hand is going to pull and make this fiber the diameter essentially that I want, and my left hand isn't going to let it go through the orifice. Sorry about that, I don't know what my children are doing up there. Actually, I want to start beating somebody, but I won't because it's all on camera. But anyway, so this hand is not going to let anything go through the orifice that isn't the size that I want, right? So this hand's going to pull this apart, and then my left hand is going to go like this, and it's going to go along, and it's going to make sure that nothing that goes through this is not the proper size. So this is quality control, this is drafting. That said, you never want to let go of while you're spinning, while your feet are moving and the wheel's moving, you never ever want to let go with both hands, or let the twist move past your left hand and your right hand, because it's just going to make this is just going to keep going around. And once this is twisted back here, you can't draft it anymore. Drafting means the pulling it apart, right? Okay, so I'm sure you know that part. So anyway, here we go. Now the part I always say in between my hands is the part that's going to be I'm going to be working on. So I never want it to have twist. I don't want this middle part to have twist, because I won't be able to do what I'm doing with my left hand. My quality control won't be able to do anything to it once the twist has actually moved down. So this area in between here, I don't want it ever to have twist in it. So doing that is something that I don't want to do. Right? Okay, see, I got a little bit of twist because I just did that in there, and it makes it really hard to draft. Okay, so any area in between my left and my right hand is the part that's coming up next to be spun, and I do not want any twist in there until it's gone through my left hand, my quality control. And see, it's pretty thin. My quality control hand is pretty thin. So I have to be really careful. I can't let it get any thinner than it is, because if I do, it's probably going to break. And the thinner it is, the more twist you're going to want to put on it. Otherwise, it will fall apart. The hardest thing is making a single ply, which is obviously what I'm doing right now, without too much twist. And that means you have to let go of it. You can't just see, I can't just sit here and hold it and spin and spin and spin, because I'm going to put way too much twist in it and it's going to be kinky. It's going to kink. And we don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to just let this piece go because I overspun it on purpose. Now, okay, so here's quality control, and my fingers are rolling the entire time. They're rolling, and they're just helping this roving become the proper diameter and nice and round, right? See how I'm doing this? And I'm never letting it get between my right hand and my left hand. Never letting any twist get in between there. Now I want to show you something. Okay, I'm going to stop. How am I going to check to see if I have the right amount of twist? Well, that's about the right amount. It might be just a tiny bit overspun, a little bit, but that's about right. You want it to twist back on itself once. If this thing twisted and twisted and twisted all on itself like that, you would know it was completely overspun. But having one kink in here and not another kink here and another kink there and another kink there and then them on each other means that I know that I have the right amount of twist. Okay? The other thing, what I've noticed is that most people that are beginning spinners, for some reason they get the death grip on what they're spinning and they don't want to let it go. You have to let it go, because if you don't let it go, it's going to kink. It's going to get all kinky and horrible. Okay, I talked about this in one of my other videos too. The other thing is you can't, when you're drafting, you can't pull with both hands in opposite directions, because what you do is you shove a kink into this yarn, into this piece of yarn that should be going into the orifice. So you never you never pull and draft like this. You have to pull in the same direction. It's like an inchworm. It's like they're pulling and they're going in the same direction, so that I don't end up putting little knots and little over twists and little kinks in my yarn. Okay, so this is how I'm using this hand for my right hand to have resistance against, but at the same time I'm not taking my left hand and shoving it in the other direction. If anything, I'm going to pull. I'm going to give it resistance, and sometimes it's going to be really hard. I'm going to give it a lot of resistance because some of this roving can be kind of sticky. Okay, but I'm not, see, like right there it was sticky, but I'm holding really hard. I'm actually kind of trying to, even though I'm holding it hard and resisting, pull it in the same direction. These two hands have to move together. My left hand and my right hand have to go in the same direction. They can't go in opposite directions. That's when you get kinks in your yarn. And kinks are very bad. And a lot of people put kinks in their novelty yarn for fun, and some people, I think, want to tell you it was there on purpose, but it might not have been. It might have ended up that they had bad technique and they just are selling it as novelty yarn. I mean, you don't know. You don't know how good that person is. But I can tell you, I can't stand kinks in my yarn because the kinks usually don't have any air. It's not airy and lofty, and so it's a tight place in your yarn, and when you're knitting it, it feels like a knot. It feels like someone broke the yarn and then tied it. So I don't want kinks in my yarn. I don't put kinks even in my novelty yarns ever. It's just one of my pet peeves, to be honest with you. Not saying you won't find one every now and again, but I really try to not let that happen. So, as I was saying, we're going in the same, our hands are moving in the same direction all the time. This hand's quality control, it's constantly doing this, and this is my right hand is my drafting hand. Okay, so that is for roving. So a bat, the way I do bats is I'm just going to rip off a section, and this has already been, the fibers are all aligned in the same direction because they've been through a carder. We talked about that. First I would put it through the picker. The picker is like, it's got all these nails hanging down off of it, and it just shreds my fiber apart, and then I go and I run it through the carder, which is going to line the fibers. Okay, so it's the same principle. I'm going to let it catch here, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. But now, I mean, bats are okay, and I like them because you can make a lot of different colors, and there's a lot of variation, and you can do them yourselves. You don't have to have a fiber processor do it. And there's so many creative things you can do with bats. But like I said, this is not how I spin. I prefer to not spin with this. And anyway, in the end, you would just end up, I could just go along, and as I'm spinning, I would just keep pulling and pulling and see how it'll just make this natural, it just pulls apart almost like it is roving. I'll just keep pulling and keep using my quality control hand and keep drafting with my right, and it almost is like using roving.